Hello and welcome to my new video. This is F1 World Grand Prix 2 on the Nintendo 64. I was pleasantly surprised by this game, I must confess, for a game that's, considerably old. It's probably one of the few exceptions of a racing game that has stood the test of time, perhaps better than many of his other contemporaries. The graphics obviously look dated compared to today's F1 games and racing games, but they're actually pretty good for the time. I think they certainly do stand up quite well. I mean, obviously there's a lack of geometry in terms of the tyres. They still look very cuboid and rough around the edges. As you can see on the car, they don't have anywhere near the number of polygons that the modern day racing games have. But in terms of the actual track detail and speed and performance and so on, there's not actually really a lot you can fault the game on. I still think it does stand up to the test of time quite well. What is notable when playing the game is the control system is sort of very unpredictable, should we say, which was kind of par for the course with many racing games back in this sort of era. The fact that you could end up sort of either suffering from oversteer or understeer pretty much happened in quite a lot of F1 games. I would imagine it's something that you can adjust in the options, but I kind of just plugged this game in and off I went. I just wanted to see what it looked like for the purposes of this video, and I have to say that I am really impressed by it. What's kind of interesting as well is the number of tracks that are in this game that are no longer part of the F1 calendar. I mean, this is Argentina, for example, and they're now going to end up going on into Austria. I kind of like the A1 ring. I was a bit disappointed when it was dropped from the Formula 1 calendar, because it meant it was dropped from the Formula 1 games, and I actually quite liked it. I still sort of dream of the day where there'll be an up-to-date F1 game that will not be necessarily licensed for one particular season, but will actually allow you to race the F1 cars on all manner of different tracks. I think that would be rather interesting, because, as I say, I did quite like the A1 ring. It's also interesting to note as well that this is still from the age where F1 did its rather silly and pointless experimentation with grooved tyres in an attempt to try to slow the cars down. The sort of impact it had on the racing was quite profound, and thankfully these days they've gone back to slick tyres, which makes far more sense than the horrible grooved tyres that they had for many years, which just was ridiculous. They looked completely wrong, they looked stupid, and I was sort of glad when F1 cars went back to wearing slick tyres. I just think it was total overkill. I know why they did it in the wake of what happened at Imola in 1994, but there were better ways to make the cars go slower, and it didn't really work anyway, because whenever they try to put these regulations into place, unless you're going to cap the speed that the cars can go at in terms of brake horsepower and miles per hour, the designers will find a way around it anyway, and they pretty much did, and it just made overtaking more difficult, and it was rather stupid, and in the end they decided that it was better to actually have a spectacle rather than just have something where cars were going around like they were stuck on a scale-electric track. And as always with F1 games, one of the first things I always like to do is whack it onto Monaco, and this is always a good test of how good the game looks, is how good is Monaco, because it's one of the very few racetracks where there's a hell of a lot of trackside detail going on. And as you can see, I got beat up by 2 McLarens straight away on the first corner. The other interesting thing to note is here the attention to detail actually goes to the point where there was the tyre manufacturer war going on. I think it was between Goodyear and Bridgestone, so depending on which car you're driving, will actually have either Goodyear or Bridgestone tyres stuck on them. I don't think it makes too much difference to the actual gameplay itself, but it's just a nice bit of detail. And as you can see, there's a nice bit of detail on the wall there that I just keep repeatedly hitting. But I mean, as you can see, it's still a pretty good looking game, and it's still well presented. I mean, if you don't mind all the drivers and statistics and cars and so on and so forth being out of date, it is still well worth tracking down and having a go on. I mean, I intend to go back to it and tweak the control system so I don't end up having a race of bumper cars going around the circuit, that I actually do end up being able to have some semblance of control over the cars. Believe me, it's a lot more difficult than it looks, especially at Monaco when you start bouncing off the walls and it's like being stuck inside a pinball machine. You know, the same can be said with F1 2011. That's equally difficult as well to get around Monaco, so it's by no means to do with the age of the game. But anyway, that is F1 World Grand Prix 2 on the N64. Thank you for watching.